Have you ever watched a movie that felt so real? You believed the actors truly shared that bond off-screen? For decades, The Parent Trap gave us exactly that. A father and daughter duo so genuine, fans thought they must have been close in real life. But what if that perfect relationship was hiding something much darker? Now, at 79, Hayley Mills has finally broken her silence, revealing the painful truth about her co-star Brian Keith, the man she once admired but eventually came to resent. What really happened between them on that Disney set? The answer might just change the way you see one of Hollywood's most beloved classics forever. If you grew up watching The Parent Trap, you probably remember that warm, fatherly smile from Brian Keith, the rugged charm, the protective energy, the way he looked at Hayley Mills like she was truly his daughter. To audiences, they were the perfect pair, a reflection of what every child wished for and every parent admired. But as Hayley Mills finally admits at 79, what we saw on screen wasn't the whole story. Back then, Hayley was just a teenager, Disney's golden girl, full of innocence, promise, and that unmistakable sparkle. She'd already become a household name in Britain, and Hollywood couldn't get enough of her. Brian Keith, on the other hand, was the seasoned American actor, older, experienced, and known for his gruff, no-nonsense personality. When the two came together under Walt Disney's watchful eye for The Parent Trap, the chemistry was instant. Fans adored their banter, their warmth, their realness. They looked like family, but the truth, as Hayley would later reveal, was far more complex. Behind the lights and cameras, the atmosphere was different. Brian was intense, focused, serious, sometimes distant. He treated acting like a job, not a playground. Hayley, still learning the ropes, was eager, curious, and naturally expressive. Those differences clashed. Where she wanted connection and mentorship, he offered professionalism and control. It wasn't hostility, at least not at first, but there was a wall between them, one she could never quite climb. Disney Studios loved their dynamic, branding it as the perfect father-daughter relationship. But to Hayley, it began to feel like an illusion. The studio system in the 1960s had strict expectations. Young female stars were meant to smile, obey, and never question authority. And Brian Keith, embodying that old-school Hollywood masculinity, expected the same on set. For years, fans assumed they stayed close, that their bond outlived the film. But Hayley has now admitted the opposite. What really happened was a quiet falling out, a growing discomfort that never fully healed. She admired him deeply at first, but slowly, admiration turned into unease. The man she once looked up to became a painful reminder of Hollywood's darker truths, that behind every perfect story lies a tension we're not meant to see. And for Hayley Mills, that lesson would stay with her long after the cameras stopped rolling. It all began in 1961, on the bright, bustling set of The Parent Trap at Disney Studios in California. Cameras flashed, directors barked orders, and everyone assumed the cast was one big happy family. To the world, Hayley Mills and Brian Keith were a dream team, the spirited young daughter and her charming, protective father figure. But behind those carefully framed shots, something much quieter and sadder was happening. During filming, the difference in their worlds became clear. Hayley was just 15, wide-eyed, kind, and eager to please. A young British star raised in a theater family that valued emotion and warmth. Brian, on the other hand, was a hardened American actor, direct, disciplined, and occasionally moody. He saw the job as work, not play. While Hayley sought connection, he sought control. Their chemistry on camera was effortless, but between takes, tension slowly grew. He could be abrupt, even cold at times, And though Hayley didn't fully understand it then, the dynamic left a mark that she carried for years. When The Parent Trap became a massive success, audiences couldn't stop talking about their bond. Fan letters poured in, praising how real their relationship felt. But as the spotlight grew, the distance between them did too. Once filming wrapped, Brian Keith moved on quickly to other projects, while Hayley returned to England and to new Disney roles. Their lives drifted apart, and though the public believed they shared a lifelong friendship, the truth was they rarely spoke again. For decades, Hayley stayed silent. Hollywood adored nostalgia, and she didn't want to break hearts or ruin the illusion. "Everyone loved the story," she once said, "and I didn't want to be the one to spoil it." But time changes everything. In her later years, especially through interviews and memoirs, she began to open up. Now, at 79, she's finally ready to admit what really happened. Not to assign blame, but to find peace. She described how the pressure of the studio system, the long hours, the strict image control, the unspoken rules for young actresses, left her isolated. Disney was a world where smiles were expected and emotions were rehearsed. Brian, though not cruel, became another symbol of that system. Older men controlling the stage, while young women learned to hide discomfort behind a perfect grin. Looking back, Hayley's confession feels almost like a release, not of anger, but of honesty. She spent decades carrying a truth that clashed with the fantasy everyone wanted to believe. And now, as she speaks from her home in the UK, she reflects with clarity and courage. What once felt like betrayal now feels like understanding. It wasn't hatred born of malice. It was pain born of silence. And that silence, she says, may have been the hardest role she ever had to play. When Hayley Mills finally spoke about Brian Keith after decades of silence, it wasn't with bitterness. It was with a deep, aching honesty that only time could bring. At 79, she didn't hold back. "I didn't hate him the way people think," she said softly. "I hated how he made me feel." It wasn't one big moment of cruelty that defined it. It was 1,000 small things. The harsh tone, the dismissive gestures, the way his bluntness sometimes cut deeper than he knew. Brian Keith was a man of his era, rough around the edges, direct, commanding. Hayley, meanwhile, was tender-hearted and eager to please, a young girl navigating a world ruled by adults who rarely asked what she felt. Their personalities collided, his realism against her idealism, his strength against her softness. Add to that the power imbalance. He was the respected Hollywood veteran. She was the teenage newcomer expected to be perfect, poised, and obedient under Disney's unrelenting spotlight. No one dared challenge an older male star back then, least of all a teenage girl who owed her career to the studio machine. So Hayley did what so many young stars did. She smiled through it. But inside, resentment brewed. It wasn't hatred for Brian Keith the man. It was frustration with the world that allowed that dynamic to exist. The hate she spoke of, years later, was more symbolic. A way to describe the pain of feeling small in a system that prized control over compassion. Disney's golden glow hid a culture of silence. Perfection was everything. Flaws were forbidden. And so, Hayley's voice, her true emotional human voice, was silenced for years. But time, as she beautifully put it, doesn't just heal, it clarifies. In her later reflections, she chose understanding over anger. She realized that Brian Keith, too, was a product of his own pressures. A man carrying the weight of fame, family, and a Hollywood that demanded toughness. She didn't excuse him, but she forgave him. Because holding on to resentment only prolongs the pain. Today, Hayley Mills looks back not with hate, but with hard-earned peace. She sees both the good and the bad, the laughter on set, the tension behind it, and the lessons that shaped her into the resilient woman she became. Her story resonates far beyond Hollywood. It's a reminder that even the brightest lights can cast long shadows, and that understanding someone's flaws doesn't erase the beauty they once brought into your life. "I don't regret the past," she said. "It taught me who I was and who I never wanted to become." And in those words, we find not just a confession, but a quiet kind of freedom. Sometimes the people who shape us the most are also the ones who hurt us the deepest. Hayley Mills's honesty reminds us that healing doesn't always come easy, but it does come. If this story moved you, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more untold Hollywood truths that deserve to be heard.